Okay. We will go for authentication, and authenticated users should be able to access the app. So I go to authentication, I go to the sign in method, and I'm enabling anonymous one because I want to allow you all to write things down without putting so much effort. So anonymous should be just fine. So, but if you want to have additional providers, email, password, phone, that you will actually use here to set this up. So I go to the anonymous, I click enable, and then I am gonna save it. And what I need to do is, of course, enabling Firestore because we also need to store the data. So I go to Firestore database, and it directly, like the UI part of it, like pretty simple. Like I love how they do it for a first timer. So we go for clicking create database, and defaults should be just fine again. Like currently we can directly just click to just for the sake of setting our app. And I'm gonna start it in test mode. Of course, it's gonna apply the default security rules. After 30 days, then you can actually change that. For example, this is putting a date here directly for 30 days. You can just delete the if check part if you want to. So this is how will it look later. For example, now I have the messages collection. Then I have messages, and in there I have fields message, timestamp, and UID. And I also want to enable hosting because I want you all to access this today and write your own messages. This part is optional. So then I will go for Cloud Firestore, and we know that we have some rules. Let's see, maybe any of you knows that. Does anybody knows what does rules version equals to mean? You can actually leave it to the comment. Let's see. These rules are actually Firebase security rules, leverage flexible, powerful custom language that support a wide range of complexity and granularity on the rules that you want to have. Because Cloud Firestore and Cloud Storage rules, actually, they use a language based on the common expression language, which we say CEL, that builds on CEL to match and allow statements to support conditionally granted access. Actually, CEL is an open source project of Google. Let me just share you a link in case you are further interested. So I just put a link there that you can check. CEL is the Common Expression Language. And if you want to do some further readings about security rules language, so I also add this one to the chat. This will give you more information related to security rules. So currently, the example is just allowing messages writes Havdi, but I will not apply these rules because, as I mentioned, I want you to be able to send messages today. And I know that, of course, you all aware of the community guidelines. I'm pretty sure that you will just write the 2024 goals and wishes. So I'm skipping the rules right now because I just need you to write more than howdy. And you will see when you enter the chat that people actually put lots of stuff in it. So we will initialize our Flutter projects. You can just set up your project with these comments. So the empty flag creates a Flutter project without the counter app boilerplate. So it will directly just create me just a Flutter project. Then I will run Flutter Fire configuration at the root of the project. And this command will show the list of applications in my Firebase console, and I will connect my Flutter app to the right Firebase project. Then it's going to ask which platforms to support. Web is just enough here. It will just generate some files. Sometimes it can throw comment like Flutter Fire not found. Then you can check your Firebase tools, their path, especially while setting up from zero. We may forget that easily. Then what I did was I checked my Firebase login. and it was looking like I'm logged in already. Then went for activating Flutter Fire CLI with Dart pop global activate Flutter CLI. Then it still didn't work. When I checked the logs, it was still an authentication issue. So sometimes the answer is pretty much easy to do Firebase logout and Firebase login again in your terminal, and it just works. I just want to mention this one. If you are already doing lots of Firebase project and then while you're setting up a new one, that's something that we can miss from our eyes pretty easily. So of course, next I will add these dependencies to Flutter app, and Firebase core is needed for any Flutter app that uses Firebase projects. It's gonna include the API to connect to your Firebase project, and Cloud Firestore and Firebase authentication are the actual Firebase products used in this project. And you see that there is generic social widgets. It's actually a small package created by Eric Weinmill, developer advocate in Google, and it includes some widgets like chat bubble. And this package gonna add styling to reduce amount of code that we gotta write while giving the presentation. And it doesn't have any functionality. We will actually see the widgets from that, so that we don't need to sit here and adjust any border radius or padding in front of you right now. It's purely used for styling. And of course, we're gonna have our pub run get. So once we run the Flutterfy CLI, it's actually, we will see that Firebase options start generated. And Firebase options is actually gives us the configurations for each platform that we want to support and details to connect. For example, and of course, I need to show you our main Dart. We created it with empty flags. So it is just with a scaffold that writes in the center, hello world. And we need to actually add the default since we are doing it with a Firebase. So this code part needs to be added on the top of the main function, every app that uses Firebase. So we are writing widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized. It is actually a blocking function that ensures your Flutter app is connected to the native platform before moving on. And Firebase uses platform channels to talk with native platforms asynchronously. So we must actually ensure those platforms are there to talk before we try to call them. And for seniors, if you don't want to get bored, I have a question for you. Then why not it is a default? Just giving you a couple seconds to think about. Why not widgets Flutter binding that ensure initialize is not default thing then, if we must need to put that? So the answer is coming from Flutter itself. The reason why it's selective initialization, because Flutter is designed to be modular and efficient, so it avoids unnecessary work. For applications that don't immediately interact with platform channels or need certain plugins initialized at startup, then you don't need to do that. Or when you need to access before running the app, access preferences and need to communicate with platform. So this is connecting your Flutter app to the correct Firebase app. And I'm just getting a voice from someone. Uh, can you please unmute yourself? Thank you. And so when I'm just going further on the code, default Firebase options that current platform actually coming from the generated Firebase underscore options files that I showed before. It's going to return the configuration for web or iOS, depending on which platform it is running. So for us, it will be web. So it is placed over the main app. And then in Firebase option Dart, you actually gonna see this information. When you run Flutter Fire configure, it's gonna create a file called Firebase options, which we see, and we saw the beginning part of it. So this information, when you see API key, app ID, I think some of you that know some security stuff would feel like, is it a secret why you are showing it here? Why I can see every information that you have related to the project and so on? And no worries that this information is not secret. It is okay to show you this information in presentations in anywhere you want to put it. And it definitely does not put your Firebase project at risk. It feels weird showing something called API key, but it is intended to work this way. Because API key is actually a unique identifier for your Firebase project used in API requests, and it does not grant access to your Firebase database or other sensitive areas at all. It is just used to identify your project while communicating with Firebase. And this looks insecure in the first place, but these are intended to be publicly accessible. No direct access, no database access, no sensitive areas access here, because the actual security of your Firebase project relies on properly set Firebase rules for Firestore, for Firebase storage, etc. And these are secure server-side configurations. The rules that we mentioned, the rules version 2 and so on, these rules actually controlling what data can be accessed by whom, regardless of visibility of your project configuration. So next, this is the standard Flutter code. It is pretty understandable because it is just readable even in English. So what we're gonna do is we are actually adding a material app to the top level of my Flutter app, and I will path the chat page to home property, which doesn't exist yet. And in web, the title here looks like looks as the name of the tab. So next, I will create a stateless widget called a chat page and add a scaffold and app bar. And in the app bar, I will pass an elevated button to show the actions property. This is where I will add the logic needed for a user login or out. But first, let's get the authentication part. So now I have the final authentication, Firebase authentication instance, and this if statement, which checks if there is a current user attached to the Firebase authentication. If the property is not null, then they must be already signed in. So I will call authentication sign out. Otherwise, I will call sign in anonymously. Anonymous sign in creates a temporary authentication credentials for Firebase, which allows user to interact with your data hidden behind security rules, even if the user hasn't signed up for your app. And if the user decides to sign up, then you can link these credentials to the new account. And we're going to have anonymous sign-in, which means it is just relying on Firebase security, but users can still post messages. So in the elevated button on press callback, I will add the if statement that gonna check this part, which is actually not something we generally use because we never put this ones, at least sign in, sign up flows like this. But as I mentioned, this is just like introductory app to just raise a Flutter app up and running in 20 minutes. And I'm actually, since explaining it, it's just gonna taking a little longer. So this page actually gonna look like this. As you can see, we have the button and all is in, of course, new material tree design, just having the purple highlights and colors. And what we need is we actually need a chat view for our 2024 wishes. So we added chat view into scaffolds body because we want to see it there. And next, I will add the chat view widget, which is a child of the chat page view widget. And this is actually where the interesting part of the application live. This is where users can send and read messages. So I will need to make sure the user is logged in before displaying it. So to do so, I will add a stream builder, and stream builder is a Flutter widget that knows to rebuild its children whenever the new data is added to the stream. And because much of Firebase uses streams to emit data to apps, stream builders are quite useful while working with Firebase. And if you don't know what does the stream is, think of the stream as a flowing river of data in your software or code, just like river continuously moves water like water, and the stream gonna continuously provides the data. Or if you listen radio stations before, it is literally like a data flowing, like you're listening the radio, and as much as you tune in, then you got it. But even if you just turn it off, you know that the data is flowing somewhere, but just you are not listening. So the stream passed to the stream builder comes from the Firebase authentication, and it's called authentication state changes. This will tell the app whenever the user logs in or out. So normally I would do this with the rule of authentication user can just read this part thingy, but no practical use for us for today and for now. So to ensure this works, I will just add these widgets. The children of the column is where the rest of our app is going to go. This text widget will display currently signed in user UID or null if there is no signed user. And here is our chat view. The whole code part of it, pretty simple. And when you just add this one, this is how your app gonna look. And once you just go into the web page, you will see this part. You click right on top, login part, then you will see user ID. If you didn't log in, then it's just null. You don't even need to write anything. But what we actually need the code. What we're gonna do with that, we're gonna read the data from Firestore. And we mentioned that Firestore is NoSQL database that gives real-time updates when the data is changed. It is like MySQL, Oracle, and so on. And if you don't didn't remember some parts of it, SQL is a structured query language, standard programming language, specifically designed for managing and querying data in relational database management systems, which we call RDBMS. And example use case for this can be some transactional systems. Like this is pretty ideal for systems where the data integrity and transaction management are critical, such as banking apps, financial applications. But we will just use Firestore to store all the chat messages in the app. Let's go simpler. And before we can query Firestore properly, I will make a class called message that represents the data in Firestore, which our Flutter UI will know how to use. This class is super simple. It has message property, which is the text of the body of the message, and UID, which is the ID of the user, and of course, message and timestamp. It will just get the time of the message posted to the Firestore. And I will just add this a factory constructor to the message class, which will take a snapshot of the Firestore data and turn it into a message object. And snapshot is a terminology used by Firebase to describe the response from Firestore at any given moment. And here is a document snapshot, like represents a data for a single message. So this is just coming as UID message timestamp. And we also need to add two Firestore methods to the message class. And yes, we are here. So we have the two Firestore function here. This will know how to turn a message object into a type that Firestore expects the data. This is very similar to adding to JSON from JSON to your data classes if you ever used before. And once we set these methods, now we can write queries to read and write from a Firestore. So next, I also need query to get my messages so that we can read and display everything in Firestore. So we call the collection firestore.instance.collection, we pass the name of our Firestore collection. And the collection is basically a list of documents, and all documents have individual objects. So here we have the list of message objects saved in Firestore. And finally, I'm going to add order by, so the messages are in chronological order. And note that this query hasn't been executed yet, no call has been made to Firebase yet. And when we just want to see the whole code, this is actually the whole code since the beginning, what we add, entire code. So let's go for displaying Firestore data. Now I created the Firebase query. I can add the Flutter code to execute the call, receive the data, and display it. So let's recall the chat view. This is where we left off the Flutter code, and the rest of the code in this presentation will be just added to the column part that you see, the column children. And this is how the web page looks like now, and this is how the widget is written. So let's go into that column. So we actually need to read Firestore data. So first, I will add another stream builder. This stream builder will call the method snapshots on the messages query that I just wrote, which returns a stream. And that stream will listen any updates to any documents in the messages collection. So whenever you add the message, and it's gonna be, of course, added to the collection in Firestore, and Flutter will rebuild the widget's children, so that you can see when somebody else is also typing as much as you type. Next, in the body of the builder callback, I will add the code that makes sure the Flutter is connected to the Firebase stream before it tries to display any messages. So when the connection state is waiting, that's gonna mean it is trying to connect the Firestore, so we display a progress indicator while it sets up. And finally, if the connection state isn't waiting, that means the Flutter is listening for data from Firestore, and we can safely display the data. So this is mostly the standard Flutter code, and maybe don't need so much explanation, but I'm gonna add a list view here to display the messages. For item count, I'm just passing the size of the snapshot. And then I have the item builder callback. I'm going to use the chat bubble, which is actually the chat bubble widget is coming from the generic social widgets library that I mentioned. It is just a text box with fancy styling. So what happened to our code now? And before we check the changes, let's go adding the functionality of adding writing to Firestore now too, because you need to be able to send the messages. So at the moment, the app is looking still pretty blank because there is no actual messages to display. So what we need a chat text input. So under the last bit of code, and this is also will be added to columns children underneath the stream builder we just added. So the important part of this slide, or in general, is the on-send part of it, the callback, because this callback will be passed a message which is a string to us. In the callback, we will again grab a reference to the messages collection, then we're going to use the method add to write a new message object to the collection. So this is pretty much how it looks. If you say show me what happened after you add this, here, this is the last bit of code. Now I'm just passing this part because I want to just deploy. Finally, let me prove that this all works, because we just see like at most 30 lines of code, maybe 40 lines of code. And I'm going to deploy this to Firebase hosting so that now we can start chatting together. So I'm going to just do the regular initializing, Flutter build web, initialize hosting, and Firebase deploy. And now we can actually all chat. You can scan this QR code, or you can actually use the link. Let me just copy the link address and share it in chat. And I would like to see your 2024 resolutions and goals. And of course, you need to do login at the top right so that now you can start sending your messages. As you can see, when you scroll up, you will see more 2024 wishes because I did the presentation and some at DevFest, and there were some people also writing their wishes, some of them in English, some of them are in Turkish. And I would like to just see your wishes. Let's see. I got cool. So this is totally anonymous. We don't know what happened. And I got hi. Let me even share this tab instead so that you can see. Learn Flutter better. Hi, cool. And let's see what you're planning for 2024. Release my first app. Learn state management. Oh, state management is super, super, like everybody is discussing about state management, but the best state management is actually the one that you feel pretty much comfortable, I would say. I don't know whether you all actually know about that part, but when you just ask to some experts, like, I don't think that any of you would directly suggest you like use this and so on. Oh, it won't send, but I said I want to become UI UX web and app designer. Amy, that sounds great. Like, I think now the code generation is going somewhere, some building flow webs going somewhere, but design is, especially the user experience part, is always alive. Now I see quit caffeine, exercise more, learn how to leverage LLMs in my apps. And when you mentioned about, by the way, the releasing the first app, a web app can be your first release or something that you just build and deployed, and we just deployed in 20 minutes. This could be also just a basic Flutter app that you are selecting like true or false, like guessing game. Maybe a game that, people are just selecting flags, guessing what it is, and so on. And it is just that easy to just launch a build and deploy your app. Find a way to use Go Router and animations together. Hope that goes good. Like when you are interested in, you can also reach Ufang and we can just get more experts. We can dive into more topics and we can do different themes of events together. But since I got your wishes, let's go back to the presentation. I will just stop presenting this one and I will present my slideshows again. Thank you for sharing 2024 wishes with me. This is like so reliable and hope it also motivates you in this road. And if you can just, I wasn't expecting that part, but everybody just came back and now maybe you can see some of them saying like 7 Ocak, which means actually January in Turkish. People are just started to log in this application and started to write some stuff in it. Let's see. I just have a couple more slides because there could be some of you inside listening this doesn't know where to start and thinking about where can I start. And you can always go to developers.google.com. They have amazing resources that you can go through. It can be, of course, about Flutter since we are here for Flutter Meetup Network, but you can also learn more about other parts of the Google products as well. And of course, for Flutter, flutter.dev is our starting point, which I also always go with the documentations and so on. And you can always ask me anything. And you can go to g.dev/Esra to reach out my profile. I'm mostly active in Instagram. And I'm also checking Twitter, not that much regularly. And feel free to reach out to me any questions of you related to Flutter, related to deploying, building, or in general, just doing things in Flutter. I would like to just remove your blockers as much as possible and clarify things for you. Thanks for listening to me, and thank you, Yufeng, for organizing this and bringing us together. Hope it just showed you like how quickly you can launch the app from zero to deployment just in 40 minutes. It just took 40 minutes for us, but we were just talking so much about the general explanations. But you can directly just have an app deployed app in 30 minutes with Flutter. Then you would just do polishing, you will just do some theming, maybe better UI, maybe gonna wrap around an idea that you have, but you can start just having your own apps and try it out.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Esra. Very appreciate. I know this is 4 a.m. your time, and your contribution is definitely invaluable. And we will work together, have more events. And everyone join this event. I wish you can send requests to us, and then we can make more and more. Yeah, so because this is a community cross global, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I wish everyone had a wonderful 2024.